Let's do a short review of Chapter 2, Project Selection and Prioritization. So here are some of the topics covered in this chapter. Here's the list exactly. Now remember, this summary that I'm doing is not a replacement for actually reading the chapter, which is what you really have to do to absorb what's going on. But this is just a primer to kind of get you rolling in that direction. And you can use it if you miss class as well. But it's really intended to just that, to get you leveraged into or momentum to read the text and put it all together. But I'll just add my thoughts to it as we go through. So here's the core objectives. Again, you can read these. I'm not going to read them all to you. But here's what we're talking about: strategic analysis, and specifically as a SWOT analysis. Now, there's other forms of strategic analysis, but SWOT's a really good one. It's deceptively simple. Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. It's divided into 4 quadrants because it considers both internal and external to the organization. So strengths can be both. What do you do well? What kind of people do you have? So if you read this matrix carefully, you can see what each one of these is made of. Okay, so this is one way to evaluate what capabilities do we have internally? Where do we see our weaknesses given what our strengths are? What opportunities do we have? And given our opportunities, what are the threats to those opportunities? And what holds us back? Where are we deficient that we could maybe not be deficient in? So SWOT is just that. It's a careful analysis, and I'll try to find a link to, I used to be able to have one, but I'll see if I can find it again, where you could do your own SWOT analysis of yourself, which is, I think, a good exercise. Wouldn't be required, but it's something to be aware of, that mindset. So strategic analysis is big picture. Longer periods of time done by the top people in an organization, the C-suite, C as in Charlie, CEO, CFO, CIO, Chief Marketing Officer, Chief Operations, COO, Chief Operations Officer, those kind of people. They're looking at the capabilities in the organization, and the reason we're doing this is we're trying to use that as a lens to see projects and to choose projects, more importantly, that are going to have the biggest payoff for us. And that can have a payoff directly in money, and eventually it has to be given in money or market position. But it competitively, for example, building a new plant or investing in new software or 100 other things. This is why this is so important. But performed correctly, a strategic analysis can be illuminating and lead to a new direction for the organization, because we're taking inventory of ourselves. It's what people do when they change their lives. So guiding principles, there's a vision and a mission statement. So a vision is one sentence that describes the organization in the future. It should lead to the mission, okay, the mechanism for achieving the vision. You can read most any publicly traded company has their mission and vision published in the on their website or their corporate papers for sure. And it's ideally these are used to make decisions from. Is this within the scope of our mission, or are we changing our mission all of a sudden? Does it match our vision? And that's why these should be very carefully plotted out, because they give you the scope of operations and what business are you in, kind of a deal. What, why, and how. So what do you do? And that's pretty an easy one. What do you do? More importantly though, what market are you in? Okay, automobile manufacturers make cars, but really the benefit that they provide is transportation, moving things from point A to point B. That's a better description of what an organization does. The why, what's the purpose? Why do we do what we do? And it's not just to make a profit. It's, why do we serve the markets we serve? What are we trying to contribute? Now, these are value statements, obviously. And then beliefs and culture. How do we do it? What kind of culture do we want to create? We can use these not as just a snapshot of what is, but what should be. So strategic objectives, you've heard, if you haven't, you are going to now. Strategic objectives are big picture, long term, where do we need to be and when kind of questions. SMART objectives, this is how you choose objectives. They've got to be specific. Going to graduate in 2 years. Measurable. How long? Well, 2 years plus or minus. Maybe we can do it in a year. Can we achieve this? Do we have the resources? What result are we looking at? And then time specific. Okay, so we can measure our progress class by class or whatever. And then, away we go. Again, this is taking inventory of the who, what, when, where, and how. So strategic objectives, if done correctly, foster open, innovative, and trusted internet worldwide. These are strategic objectives. Advance policies, enable a vibrant organization, empower people to achieve potential. Okay, again, these are typically done by the top people because we want to know where are we headed. This is what they should be spending their time doing, is figuring those things out. So here's an example from Tesla. Transition to sustainable energy. Even though, this is a small aside, somebody somewhere's got to generate electricity. So this is a little misleading, but it's a worthy goal. Okay, but having sustainable energy is a tough one because you got to generate electricity somehow, and the sun doesn't always shine and the wind doesn't always blow. But be that as it may, that's an aside. But then the mission statement, go look it up, see if it's still the same. So flow down objectives, rules of thumb, if-then statements. Well, if we're this, then this has got to be true. So if the organization's small, meaning the leaders know exactly what's going on, they've got control of things. There's not a big bureaucracy to deal with. Then we can likely go to selecting projects. If the organization's large, they got multiple projects, multiple continents, multiple markets, then we might have to delegate some of these decisions. Portfolio, this is the sort of the portfolio of business or projects, programs, sub-portfolios, ongoing operations, high risk, high reward, low risk projects. They could be made up of anything, but the portfolio it's sort of like a stock portfolio or investment portfolio. How do we intend to save money for our retirement? How do we intend to do that? Trust me when I say this, you want to start this now at your age. Okay, again, it's a small aside, but the idea of managing your own portfolio is a really good one. Programs, related projects, subsidiary programs, activities. These are the interrelationships among different projects. So here's a comparison of projects, programs, and portfolios. Again, I'm not going to read this to you, but it just shows you the scope, how big is it, the change, what's going to happen, a lot of change, little change. What's the plan? Are they detailed or aren't they? How is it being monitored? What qualifies as success? That's one thing we talked about in chapter 1. At least got started in that vein. And then manage. How are we going to control these? How are we going to manage things? Again, like I said last week in chapter 1, our project management is a very step-by-step orientation to doing things, and it's a really good discipline to have. I mean, there's an old saying that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And project management, if at anything, attempts to manage variables that can be managed and even ones that can't be to a certain degree. Projects and sub-projects, they're sort of, they're related to each other, but they might not be, like a company portfolio. Program Alpha, Program Beta, Project 3. There might be a crossover among these. So that's why they're talking about sub-projects. There you go. And then you can see kind of interrelationships there. Reasons for project failure. I think it's always good to study why things don't work. Always good. I mean, there's an old saying that success has 1,000 fathers and failure is an orphan. Well, the reality is you're smart to study other people's failures. That's how you forego learning the hard way. So I encourage you to study this kind of thing. But anyway, not enough resource. Don't have the money to do it. Not enough time. It wasn't realistic time frame. Unclear expectations. changes to the project, too much change too quickly, it wasn't, managed well, and you can see where these are all interrelated. Disagreements about expectations. So communication is you can see why communication is such a powerful thing, because communication gets you more resources. It may extend time. It makes expectations more clear, and it makes the change process a very formalized one. So there's perform portfolio management. Okay. And here we go. Organization's ability to perform projects. Teamwork. Do we have? Notice how our associates have. Look at it. All of these are related to the people that are involved. Okay, because they're the ones, really things boil down to people. Computers are great with compiling data and even mechanizing certain things. But you need people to program them, and people to read this and put it into an even broader context. That's why leadership is so vitally important with project management. Potential projects. Okay, now so here's where we start our search. So we've got market demand. All the arrows are things that push in on or influence which projects are chosen. All should participate. Identify twice the projects. Brief description of the project. Elevator pitch. That's a short speech to say this is what we're doing and why. But all of these weigh in on this. So for example, technology advance. There's risk in that. If we're moving ahead in technology, is it the cutting edge? Is it state of practice or state of the art? Those may seem to be subtle differences, but if we're state of the art, that means we're right on the edge of what people know how to do well. And some of it might be theoretical. That's why you got to be careful with those types of things. But opportunities are certainly part of this. Okay, so identifying potential projects. I just got done with the marketing class. I'm sorry, I got products on my mind right now. Reasonable goal is to identify approximately twice as many potential projects as the organization has time and resources. Here's the reason why. You want to have a lot of choices, because the old saying is you got to kiss a lot of frogs before you get to a prince. You're going to have to develop, which we'll see in just a moment, you're going to have to develop a methodology to select projects, and so meaning ones that move ahead and others that are pushed out. It's like go and no go. You've seen it maybe in a decision tree or a flow chart or something like that. What are the things that advance and what are the things that don't advance? That's why we need choices. So methods, what's the value? What are the demands of performing each project? What are the resources involved? Feasibility studies, can we do it? Do we have the talent, or can we buy the talent or rent the talent to do it? Those are some basic questions that we have to ask. Have you ever started a project, maybe you were going to build a cabinet or you were going to do something and it kind of got out of hand and you think, I'm in over my head. Sort of like doing your own plumbing or your own electrical work. It's fine if you know how to do it, but if you don't, pretty soon you can be in a mess, and it's going to cost you way more to get it fixed than it would be if you just hired somebody that knew how to do it in the first place. So a sober estimation of abilities is warranted. Is it financially beneficial? Is there enthusiastic support, external and internal champions? Does it have momentum? Okay, are people excited about it? Does it bring the organization together? Do we have, again, talent matters? Okay, 3 different types or approaches. All of these are not mutually exclusive. If you do one, you can't do another. Okay, you might do all 3 of these. In fact, probably the more you use, the better, in order to develop a broad view or a 360 view of what's going on. So financial analysis, primary means, financial models, screening devices, financial justification, one-factor or multi-factor scoring. And these are projects or investments, because they're investment in time and money. So net present value of future cash flows. How much do we expect this to generate in revenue? Cost benefit ratio. Okay, just another one. And we're not going to deal with this math, but I'm just pointing these out to you. Internal rate of return of, again, higher IRR is better than low. Okay, this is a ratio. payback period, the quick turnaround. Now again, you could run all of these. These are not that difficult to run as an equation, but you need to know but understand this: payback period, internal rate of return, time value of money. All these are based on estimates in the future. So keep that in mind. Are your estimates optimistic, middle of the road, or pessimistic? So these are not, just because you run numbers doesn't mean you've got the absolute definitive answer. They're projections. So financial models ensure the cost and return perspective, but they do not ensure alignment with strategic goals. Okay. Again, there's assumptions made in any financial model. So here's how they're calculated. Again, we're not going to spend time doing this, but you should just understand that these are available to you. If you have Excel, you can run these. Okay, that's built into the program. So scoring models, just a way to, it's sort of like a report card in a sense. Okay, what are the criteria? How are you going to score this? I'll give you an example. Right now I'm trying to decide I need a new computer monitor at home. I think I've got it down to 2 models, but I've got to identify what's most important for me, because they all have different kind of features and benefit and strengths and weaknesses. So I have to weight what's more important to me, the size of the monitor or the way I can adjust it, the resolution or the cost. And it's not that they all don't matter, it's they're going to matter with more force than others. So these are decisions that have to be made. This is a way to have a matrix where you'll score it. And again, these are based upon how you decide these things, how you weight, not W-A-I-T, W-E-I-G-H-T, how you weight or estimate things, the value. So different criteria. Again, I'm not going to read all these. You can do that, but just understand, all of these are potentially important in making a sober judgment. So government mandates, here's examples of determining mandatory criteria: must do, must have, security. If the government says you got to do something, you probably should do it or you're going to go to jail. Okay, it's not like you can just ignore it and it'll go away. Or customer requirements. Again, so here's the steps. So you give them weights. Consider and determine the importance of each. And these are judgment calls. This is why senior people tend to do these things. Sensitivity analysis. How sensitive is a number like sales, or how variable are they? So sensitivity analysis looks at if we got independent variable, dependent variable. If we change the independent variable up and down, what does that do to the dependent? That's measuring the sensitivity. Some criteria may be deemed more important than others, but sensitivity analysis is very important. How sensitive is the project to time considerations, for example? And urgency, cost of delays, details of timing, opportunity cost. If I do project 1 and I don't do 2, what am I giving up in 2 potentially, or vice versa? That's an opportunity cost. Real smart way to add a better viewpoint, a more thorough analysis. Okay, and there you go. Resources assigned, aka money. So securing projects, prepare and submit a project proposal so they get approved. Does it align with the other? Can we use resources in other places to maximize their capacity? Because we don't want to have idle capacity. Customer relationship management, for certain, we want to do that. Does this build up in the eyes of the customer and the market our reputation to be able to get things done? All of these things can matter. So use that SWOT analysis. Okay, that's a good way to work at it. These are based on judgments. Technical management, financial, operational. Typical source selection criteria. Okay. Again, you can see in project management how thorough these analyses are. negotiation with executives and things like that to secure the funding to make it a go. So the stakeholders, domains impacting product selection, who are the stakeholders, who are the teams, what's the development approach, what's the type of planning that we're doing, and what's the level of uncertainty or risk. The larger environment. Again, this is a strategic level decision. Just a couple of the points here quickly. Agile versus plan driven. So remember, we're talking mostly agile in this book. So always keep that in mind. But it's not to say that plan driven isn't important, but agile is we can change if we need to. So you can do the cross check here where it talks about these things, but it's not necessarily that there are advantages, disadvantages to both. Okay, because agile, you're going to need some. For example, a weakness there is potentially, do you have the team necessary to keep it agile, where you can absorb the changes necessary? Agile terms, make this part of your reading. The vocabulary is important. There's a roadmap example, and lastly, here's a summary. Make sure you always read these summaries carefully at the back of the book because they're really important. Okay, that's enough there, and make sure you do your reading and hang in there, pay attention to due dates, and keep working.